The war between humans and the Verexi aliens had turned many planets into ashes. Every sky seemed filled with smoke, every ground carried the marks of explosions, and every night echoed with fear. Soldiers on both sides had forgotten the meaning of peace. They only knew how to fight, how to survive, and how to bury their dead. But on the broken moon called Kiros 9, something unexpected was waiting for a human soldier named Sergeant Elias Ward. Elias walked through the ruins of what used to be an enemy outpost. His boots crunched over burned metal, shattered glass, and cold dust. The air was heavy and sharp, full of the smell of fire that refused to die. He held his rifle tightly, expecting traps or hidden enemies behind every wall. The silence made him uneasy. Silence on a battlefield never meant safety. It meant something dangerous was waiting. He reached a half-destroyed hallway when he heard a sound soft, thin, and trembling. He froze. His breath stopped halfway in his chest. It was not the sound of machines or falling debris. It was something alive. Something small. Something afraid. He stepped forward slowly, his heart beating louder in his ears. The weak sound came again, a tiny cry, like someone whispering for help. Elias lowered his weapon and followed the sound until he reached a collapsed door. He pushed aside the metal with effort and looked inside. The moment he saw what was inside, he forgot how to breathe. A small Verexi child lay curled under debris and dust. Their skin glowed faintly silver, cracked in places from injury. Their large violet eyes were wet with tears, trembling like stars trapped inside water. The child looked so fragile, so lost, and so scared that Elias felt something inside him shift. He had been trained to hate the Verexi. He had been told they were monsters, creatures without emotion, enemies who deserved no mercy. But the child in front of him was none of those things. They were simply a child hurt, alone, and crying. Elias slowly put his rifle on the ground. He raised both hands to show he meant no harm. The child flinched, whimpering softly. Elias lowered his voice to a gentle whisper. "It's okay," he said, even though he knew the child would not understand his language. "I'm not here to hurt you." He moved closer, inch by inch, making sure his steps were slow and soft. The child stared at him with wide, scared eyes. A piece of metal had caught their leg, and dried blue blood covered the wound. The child's small hands shook as if they expected him to finish them, but Elias didn't. He knelt beside them, ignoring the sharp pieces of rubble digging into his legs. He gently brushed the dust away from the child's face. For a moment, the child froze. Then their tiny fingers reached out and touched his glove. It was a weak touch, but it held fear, trust, and desperation all at once. Elias swallowed hard. He didn't know why he felt so protective already. Maybe it was because he had seen too many bodies over the years. Maybe it was because war had stolen so much from everyone. Or maybe because the child looked at him the way no enemy ever had, with hope. He whispered again, voice shaking, "You're safe now. I promise." Carefully, he lifted the debris off the child. The moment he freed them, the child cried out in pain. Elias quickly gathered them in his arms. They weighed almost nothing, just a small bundle of trembling light. He looked around. The outpost was empty. His unit was miles away. No one knew he was here. And no one would understand this. If humans found out he saved an enemy child, he would be punished. If the Verexi found out, they might kill him on sight. But as he held the child close, listening to their tiny sobs against his chest, he knew one thing with complete certainty. He couldn't leave them. He wouldn't leave them. Elias stood up, holding the child securely. He brushed off the dust from their glowing skin and whispered, "Let's get you somewhere safe." The child clung to his uniform. Shaking but holding on. Elias took his first step away from the battlefield, not as a soldier following orders, but as a human protecting an innocent life. And in that moment, everything began to change. Elias had nowhere to go. The moon was full of smoke and ruins, each step filled with danger. But he had Lumi, the small alien child, clinging to his chest. Their soft whimpers mixed with the distant echoes of explosions, and the occasional roar of human and Verexi war machines far away. He had saved them from death once, but survival meant more than just lifting them from the rubble. It meant keeping them alive, hidden and cared for. He found an abandoned bunker, half collapsed but strong enough to give shelter. Inside, dust and silence covered everything. Rusted furniture leaned against broken walls. But Elias didn't care about comfort. He cared about safety. He laid Lumi down gently on a pile of soft fabric he had pulled from an old cot. The child's violet eyes blinked up at him, still wide with fear. Their tiny hands trembled as if they were afraid he might leave them too. Elias knelt beside them and examined their injuries. Scrapes, cuts, and bruises covered small parts of their body. He cleaned the wounds carefully, using whatever he had in his survival kit. Each touch brought a small flinch from Lumi, but Elias whispered words he hoped sounded soft enough to calm them. "It's okay. It's okay. You're safe here. I won't let anything hurt you." Over the next few days, a strange rhythm formed. Elias hunted small creatures for food or scavenged supplies from the ruins, bringing back water and strange alien fruits. Lumi learned to imitate his gestures, slowly reaching for the water cup, holding it with small hands. They even learned to repeat a single sound from his name, I. Luz, over and over. Elias smiled every time they said it, as if the sound itself could heal both their souls. The bond between them grew stronger with every moment. Lumi clung to him when distant artillery fire shook the moon. They refused to sleep alone, curling against his chest, soft and trembling. Elias had never known what it was to care for someone like this, not after years of war. He had buried friends, he had followed orders. He had killed, but never had he felt this gentle, this protective, this responsible for a single fragile life. One night, as they huddled together in the dim glow of a broken lantern, Lumi spoke a small broken word. Elias tilted his head. The child's tiny voice wavered. "Mama!" Elias felt his chest tighten. He understood in that moment that he had become more than a soldier. He had become a guardian. Not for a comrade, not for his unit, but for a child of the enemy. The realization scared him. The stakes were enormous. If the Verexi discovered Lumi was alive, the child would be taken or worse. If the humans discovered Elias was protecting an enemy, he could face punishment, or even execution. Yet, despite the danger, he refused to let fear rule him. He whispered softly into Lumi's glowing hair, "I'll keep you safe. I swear. No one can touch you as long as I'm here." Days turned into nights, and the routine continued. Elias taught Lumi simple things: how to eat safely, how to hide quietly, how to listen to the sounds of danger approaching. The child learned quickly. They learned to trust him without speaking a single word in their language. And Elias learned, slowly, that love could exist even in the middle of war, that a single act of kindness could stand taller than all the walls of hatred built over centuries. One evening, as Elias patched a small tear in Lumi's clothing, the child looked up at him with eyes that seemed to glow brighter than before. They reached out, touching his face gently with tiny fingers. No words came, but Elias understood perfectly. It was trust, gratitude, and something deeper, a recognition that he had saved not only their life but their hope. Elias felt his throat tighten. He realized he had started calling them Lumi, not just because it was easier than pronouncing their true name, but because they had become the light in his darkness. In a universe filled with war, explosions, and endless loss, Lumi's presence reminded him that something pure still existed. He held them close that night, listening to their soft breathing and glowing faintly under the dim light. The world outside the bunker could remain broken and loud. Inside, he had found something worth living for, something worth fighting for. And deep in his heart, Elias knew one truth: he would not let anyone take Lumi from him. Not the Verexi, not the humans, not even the war itself. He had promised to protect them. And a promise to a child was stronger than any weapon. The galaxy had grown, quiet in the areas far from Karos 9, but not for long. News traveled fast, even among enemies. Rumors spread like wildfire. The Verexi Queen's child had gone missing during the battle. No one knew exactly where the child had gone, and the Queen's fury was becoming legend. Entire fleets were moving, tearing through human-occupied space in search of her heir. Her anger was unstoppable. Her grief was terrifying. And her vengeance would find anyone who dared keep her child hidden. Elias did not know any of this at first. For him, every day was a struggle to keep Lumi alive. The small child's wounds were healing, but slowly. Their tiny body needed certain nutrients, minerals, and foods found only in Verexi territory. Elias had tried his best with what he could find on the ruined moon, but the child's energy was fading. Each day they grew weaker, their soft glow dimming just a little more. One morning, Elias sat beside Lumi in the bunker, watching the faint rise and fall of their chest. "We need to move," he whispered. Lumi blinked at him, small violet eyes still filled with trust and fear. Elias felt his heart tighten. Moving would be dangerous. Every step outside the bunker could be their last. But staying meant letting the child slowly fade away. He packed what little supplies he had: water, scavenged food, a blanket, and a small medkit. He carried Lumi in his arms, feeling their tiny weight as both a burden and a responsibility he would never abandon. Every shadow could hide danger. Every sound might be an enemy ship approaching. He could not afford mistakes. That night, under the dim light of a fractured moon, Elias sent a secret message. It was risky. He did not know if anyone would answer, or if it would be his death sentence. His fingers shook as he tapped the code into his communicator. Cease fire. I have the child. I am bringing them home. It was simple, honest, dangerous. Within hours, responses arrived. One from the human commanders, step down immediately or face consequences. Another from the Verexi High Command, release the child or die. Elias read the messages carefully. He folded the communicator, held Lumi closer, and whispered, Don't worry. I won't let anyone take you. Not humans. Not aliens. Not anyone. Lumi's small hand touched his face, as if they understood every word. For the first time since finding the child, Elias felt the full weight of what he had done. Protecting Lumi was no longer just an act of kindness. It had become a rebellion against two armies. It had made him a target of everyone, friend and foe alike. And yet, in that moment, he did not hesitate. He could not. The journey across Karos 9 was perilous. Broken buildings blocked paths. Fire burned in the distance. Enemy patrols moved silently, their armor glinting under the cold starlight. Elias kept low, moving from shadow to shadow. Every step made Lumi shiver, but he whispered constant reassurances, telling them stories of soft green fields and warm sunlight, a world they might never have seen. At one point, they encountered a small patrol of Verexi soldiers. Elias froze. The soldiers scanned the ruins with weapons ready. The child whimpered softly, clutching his jacket. Elias had only seconds to act. He pressed Lumi behind a broken wall, hiding them in the shadows, and stepped forward. Hands raised up, the soldiers paused, scanning him. Elias's heart pounded. He spoke slowly, clearly, and without fear. I am protecting the child. I will not harm anyone. Let me pass. The Verexi studied him, their violet eyes sharp and unforgiving. For a moment, Elias feared death. But then, without a word, they turned and walked away. Elias exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. He turned back to Lumi, who looked up at him with trust shining in their faint glow. I told you, he whispered. I'll keep you safe. No matter what happens. And deep inside, he knew the truth. The danger was only beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, a mother, angry, grieving, unstoppable, was moving closer. Elias had to be ready. But one thing was certain. He would not let anyone take Lumi from him. Not now. Not ever. The first signs were in the sky, a streak of silver light cutting through the blackness above Karos 9. Elias looked up, holding Lumi close to his chest. Their small body trembled against his armor. He didn't need to see the ships up close to know what they meant. The rumors had been true. The Verexi Queen was coming for her child. The ground trembled as massive Verexi landing craft descended. Their engines glowed with deadly light, and their shadows stretched across the cratered surface of the moon. Elias kept low, moving behind a ridge, trying to find a place to hide. But no bunker, no shadow, no hole in the ground could protect them now. The Queen would find her child. That much was certain, and when she did, Elias knew what she might do. Rage, grief, revenge, all powerful enough to crush anything in her path. He tightened his hold on Lumi. The child's violet eyes were wide with fear, staring at the enormous shadows moving closer. Elias whispered softly, Stay calm, Lumi. I won't let anyone hurt you. The child's tiny hands clutched his chest, their grip almost desperate. Elias felt his own heart tighten. He had promised to protect them, and he would not fail. The Queen landed in a flash of light and energy, towering above the ruins. Her presence was overwhelming, massive and graceful, her silver armor shining, her eyes glowing with a power that made the air vibrate. Soldiers fell silent around her, both human and Verexi. Even the wind seemed to pause in awe. And then she saw them. Lumi, small, trembling, lowing faintly in Elias's arms. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the Queen's entire being changed. The fury in her gaze softened, replaced by something raw and human, fear for her child. Elias knelt instinctively, lowering the child to the ground, but keeping his hands ready to protect them. Lumi took a tiny step forward, then stopped, uncertain. Their small voice called out, Las. The Queen's gaze locked on him. Her voice, low and filled with both anger and sorrow. echoed across the crater. You protected my child? Elias nodded slowly, steady despite the fear twisting his chest. I did, he said. I promised to keep them safe. And I will keep that promise, no matter what. The queen stepped closer. Each movement was graceful, yet carried a strength that could crush mountains. Her eyes studied Elias, not just as a soldier, but as a man who had defied 2 armies for the life of a child. You risked everything. For a child of your enemy, she said. Her voice trembled slightly, though it still carried the weight of authority and fear. Elias did not flinch. They are a child, he replied simply. They are innocent. They do not deserve to die because of war. The queen paused, her expression softening further. For the first time in centuries, someone had not treated her child as a weapon, as a pawn, or as an enemy. Someone had treated her child as a being with a right to live. Lumi looked up at Elias, small hand brushing against his armor. They trembled, unsure of the massive being before them, but not afraid of Elias. He whispered softly, It's okay, Lumi, I'm still here. I won't leave you. The queen knelt slightly, bringing herself closer to Lumi. Her glowing eyes reflected a mixture of grief, anger, and awe. She reached out a long hand, trembling as if unsure whether to take the child or trust this human. Lumi's eyes flickered between Elias and their mother. Seeking the protection they had learned to trust, Elias felt a strange tension rise inside him. He had spent weeks guarding Lumi against death, and now the mother had arrived. Everything he had feared could happen. Yet, he also felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps the queen could see what he saw, the innocence, the trust, and the bond that had formed between him and the child. Do you wish to take your child? He asked carefully, his voice steady but soft. The queen's eyes never left his. I do, she whispered. But her gaze softened further. But this human saved them. He protected my child when I could not. He deserves my respect, and my trust. Elias exhaled slowly, relief and tension mingling in his chest. He stepped back, holding Lumi close to his side. I will let you take them, he said softly. But know this, I will not let harm come to them while I am here. For the first time, the battlefield felt still. The queen, the child, and the human soldier stood in a fragile circle. 2 enemies and 1 small life, caught in a moment where war paused and something deeper respect. Trust, and the bond of life began to grow. Lumi clung to Elias, their small fingers brushing against his armor. The queen looked down at the child and then at him, acknowledging silently the promise that had been made, a promise that would change everything. Elias understood. He had protected the child. Now he faced the mother who could destroy him. And yet somehow he felt that perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for peace in the shadows of war. The sky above Karos 9 burned with the lights of approaching ships. Human forces arrived first, forming a defensive line across the cratered landscape. Their weapons hummed and glowed, trained on the massive Verexi fleet descending from the stars. The rumble of engines shook the ground, and dust rose in waves. Elias tightened his grip on Lumi, feeling the child's tiny body against his chest. Their small hands clutched his armor, trembling. The Verexi queen stood beside him, her silver armor glowing faintly in the starlight. Her presence was powerful, commanding, and terrifying all at once. Her eyes scanned the approaching human forces, measuring their threat. Elias could feel the weight of her gaze behind him, and yet, strangely, it was not only fear he felt. It was a strange sense of alliance, a bond forged in protecting the child. Human officers shouted through loudspeakers, their voices echoing across the battlefield. Sergeant Ward, step away from the alien and surrender immediately. You are risking your life and the lives of your men. Elias did not move. He set Lumi gently on the ground, still keeping one hand on them to guide and protect. I will not let anyone hurt this child, he shouted back. His voice carried across the battlefield, steady and strong. They are not an enemy. They are innocent. I will not abandon them. The human soldiers hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Some looked angry, some looked shocked. They had followed Elias into countless battles, yet none had seen him defy orders like this from above. Verexi warships hovered, ready to strike if Elias made the wrong move. A Verexi commander's voice boomed over comms, full of anger and suspicion. Human, release the air at once, or face immediate termination. Elias's chest tightened, but he did not step back. He placed himself between Lumi and the approaching forces, between life and death. No more killing, he shouted, his voice rising. I am not here to fight. I am here to protect. This child is not a weapon. They are not part of this war. They are life itself. For a long moment, silence fell across the battlefield. The wind seemed to pause, dust settling as soldiers from both sides stared at the small figure glowing faintly in Elias's presence. Lumi, though small and frightened, looked up at him with trust and understanding. They stepped forward slightly, showing their confidence in the man who had carried them through death itself. The queen's hand rested lightly on Elias's shoulder. "You risked everything to save my child," she said, her voice strong yet trembling with emotion. "If he dies now, the war continues. If he lives, there may be hope for peace." The humans gripped their weapons tighter. "Sergeant Ward, this is an order. Surrender or we will fire." Elias looked at the soldiers, his face set in calm. "Do you know why we fight?" he asked, voice loud enough to carry. "Do you know why anyone fights? We fight because we forget what matters. We kill because we think survival means strength. But this child, this life, shows us something more. Compassion, trust, humanity, do you understand?" Some of the soldiers hesitated. Weapons wavered. Their hands shook slightly. They had seen death, destruction, and hatred. But they had never seen courage like this, courage not to destroy, but to protect. The queen's eyes glowed softly, and she spoke again. "He saved my child. He did not think of himself. He thought only of life, of innocence, of hope. And for that, he deserves our respect, even from our enemies." Lumi stepped closer to Elias, tiny fingers brushing against his armor. "Las," they whispered, their small voice filled with trust and courage. Elias nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "I will not step aside," he said. "Not now. Not ever. This child matters more than all of us. Do you understand? More than orders, more than fear, more than war." The battlefield seemed frozen. For one long perfect moment, soldiers on both sides paused. The child of the enemy, safe in the hands of a human, became a symbol, a small light shining across the darkness of war. And in that moment, Elias understood something he had not known before. Sometimes, a single human act of courage could hold the power to stop an entire war. The queen nodded to him, silently acknowledging the truth. Elias looked down at Lumi, and the child's small smile, faint but real, strengthened his resolve. He would protect them. No matter the cost, no matter the army, no matter the enemy. And as both sides hesitated, the first fragile thread of hope began to weave itself into the shattered world of Karos 9. The battlefield of Karos 9 held its breath. Dust rose from the craters, the glow of weapons paused, and the engines of ships hummed softly as both sides waited. Elias stood between two armies with Lumi clinging to his chest. The Verexi queen was beside him, her presence tall and commanding. Yet her gaze softened when it met Elias's. The humans and Verexi soldiers both looked tense, ready to strike, but frozen by something neither of them could explain. A small alien child, trembling yet glowing softly, held the power of life in the hands of a single human. That small child had stopped both armies. Lumi's tiny fingers brushed against Elias's armor. "Las," they whispered, their voice full of trust. Elias looked down at them and smiled softly. "I'm still here, Lumi. I won't let anything happen to you." The queen stepped closer, her voice calm but still echoing across the battlefield. "You risked your life for my child," she said to Elias. "And now, you have a choice. Step aside, and war may continue. Stay, and you may save more than just a life." Elias felt the weight of his decision pressing against his chest. The human commanders were yelling orders. The Verexi forces were ready to strike. But he did not step back. He had promised to protect Lumi, and a promise to a child was stronger than any weapon. "Look at them," Elias shouted, holding Lumi slightly higher so both armies could see the small glow of life in their hands. "This child has done nothing wrong. They are not part of this war. Killing them will not bring victory. It will only bring more sorrow. Stop fighting. Look at what truly matters." A hush fell over the battlefield. The humans lowered their weapons slightly, uncertain. Soldiers glanced at each other, seeing the truth in Elias's words. The Verexi paused as well, their glowing eyes reflecting the innocence of their own child. Lumi stepped forward a little, their small voice rising. "Stop." It was broken, but clear, spoken in a tone both human and alien could understand. Their tiny hand reached toward the queen and then toward Elias, as if to build a bridge between the two sides. Elias's heart swelled. He knelt down slightly to meet Lumi's gaze. You are right, he said softly. No one wins when life is destroyed. Not humans. Not aliens. Only death wins. And I will not let that happen. The queen placed her hand lightly on Elias's shoulder. The contact was gentle, yet it carried the weight of her respect and trust. You have saved more than my child, she said. You have saved hope. You have saved the chance for peace. And for that, human, you will have my protection. Elias felt a warmth he had not known in years. After so much destruction, so much war, he felt the fragile thread of something new. Respect, trust, and perhaps even friendship. He looked down at Lumi, who now smiled faintly, glowing more brightly than before. The human commander stepped forward, hesitating. Sergeant Ward, you may be a traitor, but... He stopped, unsure of what to say. Weapons lowered, slowly. Soldiers glanced at each other, realizing that war could wait. The queen nodded toward Elias. Come with me, she said softly. Not as a prisoner, but as the guardian my child has chosen. Elias's eyes widened. You want me to come with you? He asked. Yes, she replied. You risked everything for life, for trust, for hope. My child needs you. I need you to help protect them. Lumi's small hand slipped into Elias's. Harrion, they whispered, using their own language. Elias blinked. Harrion? The queen smiled faintly. It means guardian, the one who protects. They have chosen you. Elias felt his chest tighten. Fear, relief, and pride mixed together in a wave of emotion. He had survived countless battles. He had faced death and destruction. But this feeling was stronger than any victory or weapon he had known. He nodded, holding Lumi close. I promise, he whispered. I will protect you. No matter what comes. The queen bowed her head slightly. And for the first time in history, two enemies stood side by side. United by a single promise, to protect life, to honor trust, and to believe in hope that the engines of war did not roar. The weapons did not fire. For a single moment, peace existed. Fragile but real. And as Elias held Lumi and looked at the queen, he understood the truth. Sometimes, a human's courage and heart could change the course of history. And sometimes, even in war, hope could shine brighter than any weapon.